Okay, today is September 14th, 2019. We're doing interviewing related to memories about Petworth. Could you tell us your name?
My name is Joan Thomas.
And how long have you been living in Petworth?
I've been living in this house since 1949,
And what brought you to this house? Where did you move from?
around the corner.
And how long had you been in that house?
About 4 years.
Okay.
So
And
I've been in Petworth most of my adult life.
really since about 1945.
Right.
Okay. And before that, where were you born and raised?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And I came to Washington, D.C. because my mother died, and I came to live with my two older sisters. And in the meantime, I got married and had two children.
Oh, that's wonderful. And were they living? Your sisters living in Petworth?
They were raised in Petworth,
Okay.
and they went to school in the area
That's great.
and graduated from Roosevelt High School. And of course, when we first moved in the area, they couldn't go to Roosevelt because it was prejudice. So they went to private school, and they went to Washington Union Academy over Northeast.
Eh,
And then after integration, and they were able to go to Petworth, go to school in the area, then they went to Roosevelt. And they both graduated from Roosevelt.
And how were they older than you then? Your sisters?
I had a boy and a girl. My son
Oh, your
was
children.
Edwin,
Hmm.
and my daughter was Judy. Well, Judy passed about 5 years ago from cancer,
I'm sorry.
and Edwin lives in Maryland now.
Okay. So you raised both of your kids in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, was raised in this house.
And what are some of your earliest memories of Petworth?
Well, the earliest members of Petworth, we had everything you wanted in the community. We had a drugstore at the corner of Upshur and Georgia was the Petworth pharmacy, and was a doctor upstairs over the pharmacy. And they had hardware stores in the block, a bakery. They had Highs on the corner of 8th and Upshur, which was owned by the Brown family who lived at the corner of 8th and Barnum. And the neighborhood had changed because we had furniture stores where the Mamie Reed school is now. Houses and department stores was up there. We had Sloan's furniture store was up there. We had a department store up there, and they tore the houses down and the business in order to have Clark Elementary School. But since Clark Elementary School, now we have Mamie School up there now.
And do you remember what were your neighbors like, and how did
Well, and when I moved in this house in 1949, there was only two black families in the block. Mrs. Wynn, who lived at 711 Barnum Street, and Mrs. Gibbs, who lived at 732 Barnum Street. We went to work one morning, and we came home, and everybody white had moved out the block the exact same day.
wow? And when was that?
Uh, that must have been, if I moved here in 49, it must have been in 50. It wasn't long before we wasn't here long before they decided to move.
Hmm. And who moved in?
Well, the black people, only one white person stayed, that was Mr. Murphy. He lived at 749, and he had been in his house since 1926. And he said he bought his house for $500. And he was an attorney, and he said back in those days, in 1926, his note was $10 a month. He said it was hard for him to pay the note on the house at $10 a month because it was during the Depression time, he said. He had a long story to tell. It was very interesting. I'm sorry he passed on because he could have really told you what it was like because he could tell you about who were and when people was trying to make a living selling pencils for a penny.
Wow, that's amazing. So, your kids, you said, went to school and they went to private school. What were you doing while they were at school?
I was working.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of work were you doing?
I started off working in general accounting office, and then later I went to work for district government as a social worker, and I retired with 31 years as a social worker.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. What are some of your favorite memories of those early years?
Some of what?
Your favorite memories of those early years?
Well, there was a lot of prejudice, and there was a lot of things you could do and you could not do. I was the first black American Red Cross gray lady to wear the veil. As you must remember, back in those days, Red Cross was very prejudiced, and they didn't want me to wear the veil, but I had took the course, and I passed the course for gray lady, but then they wanted me to be first aid, but I didn't want to be a first aid. I wanted to be a gray lady. So eventually they had to give me endorse me as a gray lady, and I was the first black to wear the American Red Cross gray lady veil. That's when they had the Red Cross up here and the veil hanging down the back.
That's tremendous. And so your kids must have been teenagers by the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And had things changed by the 1960s?
Oh yes, a lot of things have changed since 1960. I would say they've changed for the better because things are much different from what they used to be years ago. Because they could go to the movies, and there was a movie close by, but they couldn't go when we first moved up here. Mm-hmm. They had to go over northeast to the movies. But after the 60s, they could go anywhere.
Mm. And so by the 60s, things had opened up.
In fact, when I came here from Atlanta, the only difference I saw as far as races was concerned, I could sit on the streetcar and the bus anywhere I wanted in Washington, D.C., where in Atlanta, we sit in the back of the bus, a streetcar. But that was the only difference I saw when I first came here in 1944.
Were there segregated restaurants in the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
When you first arrived, were the restaurants segregated?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the restaurants was segregated for a long time, all over the city.
Okay, and in Petworth too?
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't go to a restaurant that was an all-white restaurant? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And downtown, you couldn't eat downtown either. I can remember there was at the corner of 7th and E, there was a 5 and 10 cent store there. We couldn't sit down and eat, but they had a little corner where you could stand and buy a hot dog and eat right there, but you had to stand and eat. There was no place where you could sit down and eat.
Do you remember any restaurants in the neighborhood that that you were able to go to that
Billy Simpson had a restaurant on Georgia Avenue, and we were able to go to Billy Simpson because Billy Simpson was black, so we could able to go to his restaurant.
So that's where people would go?
That's where the black folks would go. And then eventually the whites started going there.
And what about in 1968? Did the neighborhood see any impact after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated?
And when
In 1968.
in '68, you carry me way back.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, things changed, but they changed for the better. You could more or less like it is now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And where did your kids go when they moved out?
Ready what?
When your kids graduated, where did they move to?
Well, my son went in the Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
and my daughter went to school up in New York.
Okay. And you continued on, and what, as I understand it, you've been involved in many things as far as activism, political activism. Are there things that you've worked on in the neighborhood and in the city? Um,
You know, I've been in practically every uh, political campaign with presidential on down. I've gotten Obama sent me gave me a birthday card, and Clinton gave me. When Clinton was in president, I thought I was part of the president because whenever he invited dignitaries, he would always invite me to come into Rose Garden, and I would enjoy that. I was a delegate also for the Democratic National Convention for 4 times. I was treasurer for the D.C. Democratic State Committee for 20-some years, and I was treasurer for the Democratic Women's Club for about 20 years. They always wanted me to be the treasurer because they said I wasn't going to steal the money. But the reason I wasn't going to steal the money was because my mama said you couldn't lie, because if you lie, you steal. And wasn't no liars, and rogues going to be in her house. And I didn't have nowhere to go, so I couldn't lie, and I couldn't do no stealing. So it stuck with me through all these years.
yes, sir. How did you get involved in your political activism?
Well, we had a neighbor who lived on Webster Street. Back then, we didn't have a mayor. We had a commissioner, and he was, I can't think of the name. This building is named after him.
Walter Reeves?
Huh?
The Walter
Reeves, Frank
Mhm.
Reeves
Oh, right.
was running for commissioner, and he got me involved. He was our neighbor, and so from then on, that was it.
And how did you? I mean, I imagine at that time some of the Democratic political figures might have been pretty segregationist. Was that? How did you transform
hardly hear you.
How did you transform the party from being kind of a more a party committed to segregation to being a party about civil rights?
Well, that happened with Dr. King and President Johnson and Kennedy during that time.
What about, as you said, things have changed. How have they changed today that are different as far as the neighborhood of Petworth itself goes? How's the neighborhood different?
Well, the neighborhood is going back to what it used to be when I first moved up here. At one time, it was predominantly black. Now, it's getting predominantly white. But I get along with everybody, so it didn't make any difference to me whether it was white, black, or otherwise. As you can see, because she wanted to make sure that I knew about it, but I didn't know about Petworth Day. And I don't know why, because I remember being a part of Petworth Day about 2 or 3 years ago.
And if where would you like to see the community go in the future?
I would just like to see less crime in the community. And I'd like to see him do away with guns.
That's great. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Nothing, but it's a pleasure to have you come and interview me, and I want to thank you for taking the time to come and interview me. And that, you know, they made me Woman of the Year, too.
And what year was that?
Look in it down here. There's a book. Right, that's it, right there. 2012.
Oh, that's terrific. And that's the Ward 4 Democrats of Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, they made me Woman of the Year, and it was a very, very exciting and very rewarding thing. Here's a
That's terrific.
You took a picture of it?
I did, and I'll take another one after we're done. Okay.
Back in.
Well, I'll put a picture and then I'll put it back.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated, and we will be very happy to share your story.
Thank you.